and then let everybody in.
Are you going to give me a signal as to when to start?
Okay, I'm letting people in now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to LAI Phoenix Chapter's meeting for February 2021. I'm Amy Winsky of AmeriCapital, and I'm your president for 2021 through 2023. As we get ready to start our program, I want to remind you to post any questions that you may have in the chat box. We will be monitoring them and we'll make every attempt to make sure they get answered.
Linda Delano, Healthcare Link new notification Zoom webinar window.
I'd like to introduce to you Julie Johnson of Colliers, who is our local chapter secretary. And go ahead, Julie, take it away.
Thanks, Amy, so much. And I am so excited to have this totally amazing panel of the movers and shakers in our Arizona life science industry. And I'm delighted to introduce to you Cameron Robb, who is a vice president of business development with GPEC, Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Her focus is on healthcare and life science med tech companies and bringing them into our robust healthcare and bioscience ecosystem here in the Valley. And she also specializes in providing market analysis and site selection assistance for industrial clients evaluating the region to increase manufacturing and distribution operations. And Cam and I have had a wonderful opportunity this past year to get to know each other, and she's helping me with some of my clients, and she's just been absolutely delightful and so helpful. Cam spent 17 years in higher education, including at ASU before she came to GPEC. She's passionate about the local community and supporting the arts, and she's been involved in women in business through the Forte Foundation, National Association of Women MBA, and as an advisor in She Leads program through AWE and A New Leap. So Cam, thank you so much for moderating this panel of our experts. Thank you.
Happy to. Thanks, Julie. I appreciate that generous introduction. And I'm really excited to have everybody joining us for this great panel on life sciences in Greater Phoenix. And I really think that, you know, the goal here is that we hope after the next hour, you're able to walk away with a better understanding of what makes Greater Phoenix an ideal ecosystem for healthcare and bioscience innovation. So I think, as Amy mentioned, we're going to have about 10 minutes toward the end of the hour for Q&A. So if you have any questions, add them to the chat. And now what I would like to do is have our panelists take a few moments to introduce themselves. So I will give each of you the honor of letting us know a little bit more about who you are. And so Dr. Stephen Monk, I'd like to start with you, please.
Hi, thanks, Cam. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Steve Monk. I am actually an ASU alum. I did an undergraduate degree here some years ago, went on for a PhD in medicinal chemistry at Berkeley, an American Cancer Society postdoctoral fellowship in molecular biology, and spent 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry, initially in discovery at Allergan in Southern California. The group that I led commercialized a glaucoma treatment called Alphagan. And from Allergan, I moved to a small company in Michigan called Ash Stevens, founded by Doctors Ash and Stevens. And Ash Stevens was actually the manufacturer of the drug substance found in Alphagan, which was the origin of my move. During my time at Ash Stevens, we received 14 FDA approvals to manufacture, including drugs like Velcade, first-in-class proteasome inhibitor, Vidasa, Iclusig, mostly cancer drugs. After the founder passed away, the company was sold, and I had an opportunity to think about what was next for me. And given the exciting things going on at ASU, in particular biodesign, where I'm the deputy director now, it was just too exciting a place not to return to. So I'm really happy to be here. We're doing some amazing cutting edge science here at Biodesign. We very quickly set up a COVID testing laboratory a little under a year ago to try to help with this crisis. And to date, we've done over 650,000 tests, including largely using our saliva-based test, far more pleasant than the nasopharyngeal swab. We are creating companies here. One of them, I think, will soon be a resident with Kyle's Wexford building. Pretty exciting. Oncomix, they did a $25 million raise, a very novel way to treat cancer. So I'm just thrilled to be in this ecosystem. It's really an amazing place for biotech people with ASU downtown, U of A banner, medical school, TGen. In the area, you've got Creighton Medical School, Mayo Medical School. It's just an amazing place. So very happy to be back in Arizona.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And now I'd like to hear from Dr. Timothy Mcdaniel with the Translational Genomics Research Institute.
Hi, thank you, Cameron, and welcome everybody. It's great to be here talking to you. And I'm talking a very exciting week for TGen, as I'll get to in a minute. But my own background, I'm a genomics scientist who had spent my career in the San Diego startup environment. I was the 12th scientist that joined a company called Illumina that then grew to be one of the biggest companies in the genomics field. It had a market cap of about $20 billion when I left 14 years after joining it. And I actually came to TGen the first time in my personal life, trying to get a diagnosis for a family member who had a rare cancer. And TGen, after many other groups had failed, successfully diagnosed this cancer, made a huge impact to my family. And then by a crazy turn of events, I was actually invited then to come join TGen in 2014 to help scale up the very methods that had been used to benefit my own family. So I joined in 2014 and helped TGen launch a spin-off genomics laboratory called Ashion Analytics. And on Tuesday this week, we just announced that the spin-off lab is going to be acquired by Exact Sciences, the $25 billion Wisconsin-based cancer diagnostics lab. They're the group that has the Cologuard at-home colon cancer test. And following this acquisition, the lab is going to be really scaled up here in Phoenix, actually in the TGen building, in order to commercialize a new super sensitive blood test for cancer that is based on some TGen technology. So, really my story is one that I think demonstrates all of the benefits of working in this amazing environment. We have some of the brightest scientists that you would ever find. This blood test that's being commercialized now with this acquisition, some of the early clinical data that supported its worth was done in collaboration with the Biodesign Center, with Mayo, Arizona. So it's really a demonstration of the excellence that's here, but also the ability for the players in the ecosystem to collaborate together in order to create value for patients and for the area. So I'm a super strong believer in what a great area this is, and look forward to the discussion today. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, Kyle, I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Cam, and thanks everybody for putting this on. And congratulations to Dr. McDaniel. I was really excited to hear that news this week, and I've had a couple of discussions with a variety of people already about the acquisition, and it's a wonderful news, and shows the strength and power of collaboration, and especially coming out of the TGen building. So congratulations.
Thank you, Kyle.
We like being neighbors to such great collaborators and amazing scientists. So I'm Kyle Jardine. I'm with Wexford Science and Technology. I'm the Director of Development here in the Phoenix market. And Wexford, just kind of little overview of Wexford, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. But Wexford is a real estate development company based out of Baltimore, Maryland. And our whole purpose is all we do is partner with universities or other large research institutions to develop adjacent or in the same building with them research collaborative knowledge communities is what we call them. So innovation districts is kind of the buzzword that's out there. We call them knowledge communities, where there's a collaboration of talent and adjacency and co-location of that talent. And that forms great stories like Cheyenne and others throughout the country. So primarily in the Eastern United States historically, but ASU has been a great partner of ours over the last few years, and this is our first project in the Western United States. So we're excited to be here in Phoenix. Myself, I actually am a relocate as well. I came here to Phoenix from Salt Lake City about 2 years ago now, and my wife is from here, so it was kind of a wife boomerang me back. We met at college, and we came down here after being in Utah for about 7 years together. So it's a great place. I'm excited to be here. There's a phenomenal amount of momentum, especially in downtown right now. And we're huge believers in the Phoenix Biomedical Campus and the potential that it has to become a world-class innovation district. So great
Wonderful.
to be here.
Thanks. What an all-star panel. This is so exciting for me, and I really appreciate the different perspectives that I know you're all going to bring to this discussion. And I think just to start it off, it's really hard to believe that we're coming up on a year now of when the pandemic first set in. So, I think notably much of the surge that we're seeing in Greater Phoenix has been a result of the pandemic, but well before social distancing and mandatory masks became a thing, the bioscience boom was truly already underway in Midtown Phoenix, certainly. And the Biodesign Institute at ASU and TGen have become major innovation and delivery partners during the pandemic, certainly helping us to meet the growing need for accurate and timely tests. Research continues to find solutions for COVID-19 and a wider range of other health challenges that certainly have not gone away since the virus began to spread. So, just on that kind of current state of things, and maybe a COVID-related note, starting with Dr. Monk, could you just expand a little bit more on the pivot you touched on, as biodesign went from just research to the COVID testing, being a first adopter in that area?
So biodesign is really perfectly set up to make such a transition. Our executive director, Dr. Josh LeBaire, who you've probably heard on the news very regularly in the last year, actually had all the robots in place for the diagnostic tests that his group was already developing. Among the basic research activities that he's been involved with in the last few years, we're developing a blood-based breast cancer diagnostic that, coupled with mammography, effectively eliminates the need for unnecessary surgical biopsies. They're involved with a very big program with BARDA, actually looking at diagnosing radiation damage to people after a dirty bomb was detonated in an area. So for example, if a bad guy leaves a dirty bomb in New York City, how do you figure out what kind of radiation exposure people had a week after the bomb went off? So the sort of basic robotic technology was actually in-house. And this is really exactly what biodesign was built for. Josh is a diagnostic expert, so he's able to just pivot these robots directly into a CLIA certified laboratory. They are already doing things according to the clinical laboratory standards because that's what BARDA required. So really within a matter of weeks, the testing was set up and going. It's now being conducted free of charge at a variety of locations all around the state. And I think has been very helpful at getting things back up and running again. Yeah. So additionally, we're doing some things in developing second and third generation vaccines. So I mean, that's just the kind of things that biodesign, I think really a lot of organizations in the metropolitan Phoenix area are doing with, TGen, the U of A Medical School, Mayo, the spin-out companies that are happening. So it's an amazing place, certainly a very different place than I left some years ago.
That's true. Yeah, I like to say the same. So, if we could talk to you, Dr. McDaniel, about the regulatory environment as it relates to some of this. I know that TGen also had COVID tests developed within a month of the onset of the virus. So maybe you can talk a little bit more from a regulatory standpoint.
Yes, and we had a similar journey to biodesign in seeing the crisis that had arrived with COVID and feeling like we had the capability, so we had the responsibility. And unlike biodesign, so TGen has a pathogen unit up in Flagstaff, Arizona, and that unit did not have the regulatory infrastructure to do clinical testing. So on January 23rd, 2 days after the first confirmed case in the United States, the laboratory decided to launch a COVID program. By February 15th, we had developed our test. It was our own PCR-based test for COVID. And by March 5th, really starting from scratch, had all of the state licensure in order to do clinical testing and just hit the ground running in March when just as the first cases had arrived in the community here in Arizona. So, just a remarkable ability to cut through all the red tape and start helping people because of the light regulatory for lack of a better word, red tape here in Arizona. Having started up similar clinical endeavors in California, I don't think we ever would have been able to do it with that kind of speed in that environment. And it's part of what makes this area so great for business.
Right. Thank you for that. Well, and, just to insert quickly, as Julie mentioned earlier, but GPEC's focused on, the strategic growth of the region based on our public partner private partnership. And so, when we hear about these innovations and these advancements, these are kind of the calling cards that we use to users who are out of market, to basically draw them in, to say, look what's happening here. Look at what can happen in such a short amount of time. And so as we, focus on some of those headlines, because quite frankly, we know that made national news, what TGen was doing. And so I'm curious, Kyle, as you are also working with clients who are exploring our region from, out of market, are you noticing any, kind of anecdotal information as far as users commenting on or being interested in, some of what we've been able to do here in terms of surging ahead in these new discoveries?
Definitely. It's been interesting to kind of get the lay of the land for the past 2 years on where Phoenix has come and the history of life sciences here in the market and the growth that has occurred. Historically, Phoenix hasn't been on most people's radars for life science, right? It hasn't been on most people's radars for a lot of different industries. But as I've been out and having discussions, I get calls from Chicago or Seattle or San Francisco or San Diego regularly. And when I give presentations to either brokers or companies directly, they're blown away by the amount of collaboration, the amount of company startup activity, the amount of government support and regional support like GPEC or other economic development groups. And it really opens their eyes up to multiple discussions that I've had. Well, yeah, we figured we'd talk just to get an idea, but never thought we'd actually consider Phoenix. And then all of a sudden Phoenix is on the top of their list as a strong contender. And that's been really, really interesting to see. Historically, infrastructure is lacked. And so that's one of the things we've brought to the market and will continue to bring to the market is true purpose-built lab space, right? But it's been really interesting to see the reactions of those different companies, and over the next few months, we'll have some good announcements to show the results of that.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that too, the infrastructure, the availability, because that's something that we're seeing as a national trend, right? Is the lack of space for tenants because the demand is high. And so you have one of the only and single largest lab-enabled buildings right now in the Phoenix Biomedical Campus area. So, you know, just to, and I do want you to take us further down the path of that. But when you take a look at the market growth, and, you know, we could start with the Park Central core, kind of healthcare core, which is, you know, for those of you who don't know, the Park Central is that iconic former outdoor mall that's been redeveloped and is now a multi-use hub. And we're seeing $3 billion worth of capital investment and over 4.5 million square feet with growth in terms of footprint here in the area that's going to add 7,000 new jobs to the region. So the momentum that we're seeing is largely built on homegrown wins with Dignity Health headquarters and St. Joseph's Hospital and Banner headquarters and everything else. But 2 miles to the south of that Park Central corridor is that 30-acre Phoenix Biomedical Campus. So I really do, Kyle, if you wouldn't mind, just walk us through a little bit more, you know, of the floors and some of the capabilities, the partnership with ASU. I do want to focus more on partnerships, but if you could just start us off there with, you know, some of the true highlights of the Wexford building, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So the building as a whole, and I think it's really important to focus on the campus as a whole. The Phoenix Biomedical Campus is a phenomenal vision and forethought, and anchored by TGen, anchored by the three universities. That in itself is phenomenal that ever occurred, right? That you were able to get these large organizations to agree on a location and work together in a co-located opportunity. The city and a lot of others in the state and other organizations have big kudos for that. That's what attracted us to come. But then specifically our building. So our building, TGen is the only other building on the Phoenix Biomedical Campus that has private companies in it. There are others that have small startups coming out of the universities in the partnership building and some of the other spaces, but it's not long-term space for those companies. It's short-term space that they will have to get out of as they grow. And so our building is 227,000 square feet, 850 North 5th Street. So it's on the northernmost part of the campus. I'll show a little video of that here as well. But in that space, we visualize the building as a small community in itself, encompassed by this larger community of the Phoenix Biomedical Campus. So we have 50% of the building that's ASU, with a variety of different groups, interdisciplinary, both clinical research and wet lab research in this space. We have entrepreneurship activity on the first floor with ASU and the Center for Entrepreneurial Innovation, which is part of Gateway Community College and the Maricopa Community Colleges. And then the top 3 floors of the building are for private lease. So we will be building out those spaces for private laboratories, some of which are spin outs out of ASU or TGen or others, and also relocations to the States. So that's about 100,000 square feet worth of wet lab space that's ready to go. Yeah.
Right. You know, this would be a great time if you want to show your video of that asset. I think we'd love to see it.
Okay, sounds great. Let me make sure I'm sharing sound as well here. Just a minute. All right, what are you seeing? I'm not.
So it looks dark right now, but it seems like if you pressed
Okay,
play,
we're
we
good?
might have a good shot. There it is.
All right, perfect.
Great. Thank you. So, there wasn't, I don't know if the sound came through for everybody or not, but I think visually that was a pretty appealing visual tour. And I've had the pleasure of walking multiple clients through that space, prospective users and things like that. And it's really interesting because you're seeing these beautiful, views of not only downtown Phoenix, but, the extended part of the region. So, what we're seeing is people who are truly looking to relocate or expand their business, they're taking all of that in as part of a greater landscape of what would afford a lifestyle or the livability factors that I think everybody considers before they make a change of that scale, moving a business, moving families, moving a workforce. And I'm a native Phoenician, so this is my hometown, and certainly the city that I grew up in is not the one that I'm living now. It's so much different, and of course that's what's led us to being the 5th largest city in the nation. And I know that each of you relocated to Phoenix from other markets. So you touched on that a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper into the relocation and the livability factor of Greater Phoenix and what we have to offer as a market in terms of lifestyle. So Dr. Monk, I believe you're from the Midwest, but maybe you can kind of talk us
I
through.
lived in metropolitan Detroit, although I grew up here. And I have lived all over the place, the San Francisco Bay Area, Chicago, Newport Beach, California. And again here, the lifestyle actually downtown is extremely attractive. Wexford did not exist 3 years ago when I moved back. But I have to say, especially since I'm a real city boy, I like things like walking to restaurants, the opera, the symphony. You can walk all over the place. There's spectacular places to live down there. You can walk to your office, although I'm a car buff. I probably wouldn't have a car. I would just live downtown. You can walk everywhere. So I think the lifestyle is spectacular. Certainly compared to either Northern California or Southern California, it is far more affordable. Housing is just a radically different situation. It is hard to get used to August again, but I certainly don't miss shoveling snow, which I did for 20 years in Metro Detroit. Plus, you have that hub downtown Phoenix with all the universities, the medical campuses, TGen. So I think between the intellectual environment there and the lifestyle, it really is very attractive.
Thanks. Yeah, I like that, kind of calling out the intellectual and the social elements. What about for you, Dr. Mcdaniel, coming from San Diego?
Yeah, well, for starters, my Arizona home is like a container for my California home. And um, definitely the different California recruits that we've brought out here have just loved the ability to uh, um, live among nature. I mean, I'm looking out right now at a beautiful view of Camelback Mountain. But I think even more importantly for the growth of a company, I mean, in San Diego, it was getting to the point where the entry level PhDs were having trouble breaking into the housing market in any place that they wanted to live. And here, I mean, seriously, at every level, the security guard lives in a house, which certainly wasn't the case in Southern California. So the ability to offer an environment where young talent can establish themselves and actually have a good lifestyle outside of work, it's been a very attractive thing.
Absolutely. And Kyle, and I think you're the newest one. Has it been over a year now?
Yeah, coming up on 2 years.
Coming up on two, man. Time flies.
Yeah, coming up on 2 years, and I relocated here with 3 kids as well, and so that was fun and has been an interesting. So the amount of opportunities and I know there's some discussion about schools not being to par, but we found some great schools and the options of charter schools and public schools, and I mean your options are really great here in Arizona, where sometimes you have to live in the neighborhood you go to the school, right? In a lot of other states, and that's not the case here. So that's been great as well, and we've enjoyed the outdoors, enjoyed getting out on the lakes and boating and hiking and all of that side of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have top 3 high schools here in the nation through our basis school system. So, we are winning in some areas. But I think that, the quality experienced workforce is one of the first reasons that life and bioscience companies are selecting Phoenix. And as we know, ASU boasts enrollment of over 110,000 students at this point. We know that Creighton University has a new $100 million health sciences campus that's currently under construction, with programs that are scheduled to start this fall. And, ideally, they're going to be graduating 900 doctors, nurses, therapists, dentists annually. And so with that type of knowledge boom, I think that's going to be really helpful to us because not only companies are looking at the space, but they're looking at the talent and do we have it? And between ASU and U of A and, certainly Creighton, I think, and Grand Canyon, we've got a really strong chance. So I'm just curious, what is your take on talent? Dr. Monk, I want to start with you because I feel like you're the closest to it. And I want to be realistic about the gaps that maybe we face as well.
Well, I'm a bit biased being at ASU, being around, these bright young students who are just soaking in the knowledge is amazing. And that's why I wanted to transition back into an academic setting from industry. It really is amazing. People are very interested in broad ranges of science. Biodesign people have the opportunity to go to seminars in all kinds of different areas. It's a multidisciplinary approach to things. So I think people are really here soaking in the knowledge and anxious to apply that knowledge to make the world a better place. That too is really a mission of biodesign, not only to do great science, which I think we do, but really to translate the science done here out into the community to make the world a better place. For example, one of our centers is actually looking at water, how you can take mining sludge, purify the mining sludge to get drinking water, and oh, by the way, start a business to purify valuable heavy metals like palladium out of that. So very practical, very important, but really interesting basic science. That center certainly collaborates with people all over the valley, all over the world, and actually with microbes too, as the center director, Bruce Rittman, likes to say. He's collaborating with microbes in that he's using those little microbes to work in bioreactors to do the purification. One other thing I should mention, you were talking about infrastructure and facilities. ASU certainly has spectacular research instrumentation available to anyone at ASU and anyone in the community for a very reasonable fee for service. So if you need magnetic resonance imaging or nanofabrication, or you want to do genomics work, all these things are available here at ASU with scientists operating instruments to help you design your experiments and do really whatever is needed. So you have a tremendous breadth of students here from chemical sciences, biological sciences, engineering, computer science, to instrumentation. So I think the population of people to hire is really quite amazing here.
I would agree with you. And it's interesting because when I was at ASU, I was in the business of talent. And so I helped to manage, all of the employer relationships for any hiring organization looking for graduates and so forth. And it was really exciting to boast that ASU has 26,000 students in their engineering college, so definitely seeing that with you. Yeah.
Things that I don't even think about as engineering. People are doing engineering of microbes. So really things I would have called molecular biology,
Right.
as well as thinking about the built environment, how to design an environmentally sustainable city, for example. So you've got engineering in every possible nook and cranny that you'd want to think about engineering.
Thank you. And I know, Kyle, you were talking a little bit about, the trifecta of NAU, ASU, and U of A. Do you have any kind of early indicators of what some of those programs could look like in terms of how they're housed at Wexford?
Yeah, collaborations would be the big thing. In our building specifically, we won't have educational classes. It's hard research, right? Within our building, clinical and laboratory research. But there's awesome potential, especially for future phases. That's another exciting thing about the Phoenix Biomedical Campus is there's potential for a few million square feet additional space still. Right. Rarely in a dense urban core do you have 3 blocks of vacant land that are just sitting there. Right.
Right.
So there's potential for expansion for those students to have larger colleges, larger schools, expansions of schools, and then also for those students to gain actual experience with companies, interns 2 blocks away. Right. And to grow that talent organically. Within the companies that are working in our building or the research that's being done in our building, rather than having to go to California for something or to the East Coast for something or whatever it may be.
Sure. Well, and then doesn't also CEI have a validation lab and some workforce programs and some? Yeah,
and that's a great other side of it. Is one of the things that we've seen nationally is that you don't have to have a PhD to be part of this industry, right? And more than half sometimes, depending on the company, don't, right? And so to have workforce training with the CEI doing LabForce, which is laboratory technician training, quality assurance training, they can get certified in something and make good money working with these companies and gain the on-the-job experience to grow kind of organically as well, right, in the company. Not necessarily with a 4-year degree.
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny. So you talk about organic growth. I would love to ask, Dr. Mcdaniel a little bit more about what you've seen. You mentioned Exact Sciences earlier, but I imagine you've got a fair share of experience with spinouts, and companies
Right.
that are going to start with you and they're going to, grow and expand. So what are you seeing there in terms of, that kind of smaller scale growth that's got potential to really make an impact?
Yeah, well, one of the things, getting back to the point about regulation, that is a huge advantage that you have for growth in Arizona. As I mentioned, when I was in California, I got a couple of different clinical operations going, and they have these licensure requirements there where to handle a human clinical sample, there's a special license that the laboratory people have to have. And part of getting that licensure, they have to do an apprenticeship in a laboratory. And there's only a certain number of people that a laboratory is allowed to train at any given time. And so once people have this licensure, they're, everybody wants to snap them up. And so you're put into this crazy situation where you have to do an apprenticeship to grow your talent. But the minute then that they've achieved this level where they can independently run your processes, everybody else in the world snaps them up. And it really was an impediment to our ability to grow to the level that we needed to. Here in Arizona, there are certainly responsible clinical regulations, and you're governed by all the national ones, but you don't have this extra layer that prevents you from growing your business at the rate that it needs to grow. So that's been a huge advantage to us, and I think one of the reasons that groups like Exact not only want to acquire what's in Arizona, but then they want to expand it here.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because if you take a look, even, you're talking on the regulatory front, but I'm also thinking in terms of risk capital, and I'm thinking of terms of, the funding that's available for companies to grow here. And, if you take a look at where we were in 2016, which I know is a few years ago, 79% of our VC deals since 2012 and 82% of our VC deals, came around in 2016. And so we're seeing pre-seed and angel investment funding in Arizona at 63%. And we're seeing more NIH grants, we're seeing more, foundation grants, and we're seeing more spend, certainly in that area. And so I'm thinking the talent, I'm thinking the space, I'm thinking the dollars, and it just seems like right now we have an ecosystem that is so well positioned, among Phoenix, Denver, Houston, Salt Lake, some of our peers, that I don't know if they're seeing the same positivity that we are, quite frankly. And so when you also, kind of take a look at some of the people or some of the companies who have been really successful here. We've got BD and Celgene and Dexcom and Medtronic and W.O. Gore and Stryker. They've all expanded here. They are all delivering life-saving and life-changing innovations. And so, as we kind of wrap up a few things, really just a last topic here before we head into some of the questions, I wanted to ask you about trends. Where are we going with this in terms of insights on onshoring, pharmaceuticals? Dr. Monk, you've got a massive lifetime of experience with pharma and drugs and development. And, are you seeing any opportunity for things that are coming internationally, not just domestically?
Well, certainly pharma is something that I think people are getting more serious about onshoring again. It really is quite a scary situation given the percentage of our drugs that are made in India and China. I know that Virginia, they actually got on the order of $250 million from the government to set up a pharma manufacturing plant there. I happen to know something about that since a former collaborator of mine who was working at Boehringer Ingelheim at that plant, who moved into academics when they shut down the plant, now I was able to buy it back to do exactly that. So I think people are very cognizant of that. It really is a scary thing to have all of the Cipro made in places like India and China, when you may need that if somebody sends out anthrax, and the anthrax could come from India and China. So it really is an important thing to make drugs here. So I think people are interested in it. It will take time, and people have to recognize that there are costs involved. We pay a very different wage here than is paid in India and China, and certainly our standards are very different in terms of the level of pollution that we'll tolerate. That's just the practicality of it.
Sure.
I certainly was, quite successful in running a business in Michigan, manufacturing pharmaceutical products. The time I was there, we quadrupled sales, tripled employment. As a small company, we spent about $50 million in capital building plants and research labs. So it certainly can be done.
Absolutely. And I think, some of the other things that we've talked about in the past, and Dr. McDaniel, you might have an opinion on this, but, Greater Phoenix, we've got a legacy of microelectronics and semiconductor industry, and certainly manufacturing. I mean, this is a large space for us. And right now, we've got a huge semiconductor opportunity for the US here in the Greater Phoenix region. So, you might have an idea about objects that we could make at a nanometer scale, Dr. McDaniel, and some things like that. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, actually, my mom and dad lived in Phoenix in the late 90s and early 2000s because my dad was in the semiconductor manufacturing industry. And there's a great legacy of that going back to Motorola. Intel continues to be a big presence here. TSMC, a global giant, just announced a huge multi-billion-dollar investment they're making in the Valley. And what's happening in biotech is biological and medical sensors are now becoming miniaturized down to the nanometer scale. And so, who's good at making things at the nanometer scale? It's the semiconductor industry. So we're seeing a convergence of these two industries happening right now. And I think that, with all the life science advantages that we've been discussing, is really a great opportunity for this area. Because all the ingredients are there, and certainly for the rest of my career, it's going to be a huge area of growth.
Agreed. And I think there's, a whole nother subset of opportunity with the supply chain management, as it comes to sensor technology and medical device manufacturers, distribution. There's a lot of logistics there. So, well, I think we are now at time to take some questions. So I'm not sure if somebody's been tracking anything that may have been posted in the chat, or if anybody on the call wants to go ahead and just raise a voice and engage one of our panelists.
We don't have anything in the chat room, which is really surprising. We were having some technical difficulties in the beginning, so I'm wondering if we are not getting chats through on that.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, anybody's welcome to just kind of pipe up if that capability is available for this call. In the meantime, while maybe people get a little bit of, juice flowing for what they might want to know further, I can tell you that, at the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, we're currently tracking 300 active prospects. So out of market users that are exploring Greater Phoenix as a region to do business. And, of those, I would say 70% are industrial, and there is a lot of medical, certainly bioscience, life science industry attached to that. We're seeing about 27% of our prospect activity coming out of California. And of that group, 55% are manufacturing. So, I would say within my pipeline, and I'm managing everything in life sciences, healthcare, bioscience, and industrial, 20% of my projects are healthcare related. And so I think that we're absolutely noticing some of those things here. And now we have how many are employed in this industry now from Michael Klein. So in the industry of life sciences, I don't know if somebody wants to take that.
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a straight answer for that. A lot of those numbers are usually mixed with healthcare. And healthcare, as many know, is a huge number in the state with a lot of the clinical trials and all of just the general care for so.
I would suspect that AZ Bio has those data readily available.
I'm gonna pull up a few things while we continue to talk and see if I can find a better answer though.
Well, and Steve, you even said in a crossover, some of the engineering is in the nanotechnology space. So that would be the bioscience as well. So that engineering population would also be included.
Well, we're certainly doing things here in the area of nanofabrication, fabrication of wearables. One of the things that has come out of biodesign is the world's first metabolism tracker using breath. So it's not a blood test. You can use breath. It's now an FDA cleared device. So yeah, and there's some really interesting engineering things going on.
Is that more for diabetics? Is that?
It's
Would that be-
diabetics and anybody who wants to track their metabolism.
That's incredible.
We're building a device here in the basement of our newest building, Biodesign C, that will be able to make movies of molecular processes. For example, how a virus actually attaches to and infects a cell.
How
So that will really be a remarkable device, something kind of competitive with the Stanford Linear Accelerator, but rather than costing many, many billions, it's something that a university can actually afford to swallow financially. So,
That's incredible. Sheila Harris is also asking, where are the areas for growth? Where do we see the future?
oh, I certainly see it on the bio side of things. For example, Grant McFadden's spin out is actually using a biological way rather than a chemical way to treat cancer. So I think work, on the biologic side of the space rather than the small molecule side is really an area for growth. You're seeing that with some of the newer, very targeted therapies. So that's new and interesting, I think. Tim, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I'm really seeing, I'm seeing a critical mass in clinical genomics testing. We've got Caris, we have Exact Sciences coming in, and I think it's because we have all these different pieces here of a regulatory environment where you can actually grow. You have the cutting edge technology, and you also have the cooperative ecosystem where it's easy to work with the different medical centers here. I think in a way that I've seen to be much more difficult in other areas.
I do have some employment data. I was able to find it on the AZ Bio website. So bioscience industry employment in 2016 was well over 25,000 people. And in terms of economic activity, $500 million. So it is substantial and growing. Certainly we did not have BD here back in those days. That's a big employer. Medtronic is certainly growing here. You have the spinouts from TGen and ASU as well as U of A.
So in the 80s and 90s here, we had larger pharmaceutical research and development, manufacturing facilities here in Phoenix.
Probably manufacturing and distribution. I don't really think, I've been in pharma for a long time. I don't really think there were many research operations here.
Didn't Shine have a large pharmaceutical a research and development down on 51st Ave?
Really them as a big R&D operation.
Do you see us getting back to that? More of that, where other pharmaceutical companies would come in, do some manufacturing, do some?
Manufacturing, I'd certainly like to see. I think, as Tim has said, the regulatory environment here is very friendly. I was in Southern California working for Allergan, and because of the fire rules, we almost could not do medicinal chemistry. They restricted the amount of organic solvents you could have in a fire area to a very, very small amount. So certainly I think the regulatory environment here, like Michigan was a great place to make drugs. San Francisco is not a great place to make drugs. Irvine was not a great place. That's why Allergan outsourced everything. I think Arizona would be a great place to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think too on the drugs and the pharma and the diagnostics front, we've got Abbott Labs, certainly Pfizer, we've got Celgene. What I'm seeing the majority of hiring is sales and related positions or clinical and clinical research. That's where we're seeing a lot of job postings specifically in that area. So in the last 2 years, there were over 4,600 unique postings.
We see this as a great place to conduct clinical trials and research. You have a
Yes.
tremendously diverse population, and certainly as we see diseases of aging, Alzheimer's and things like that, we do have a population that's ripe for those kind of clinical trials.
Absolutely. I think right now we've got something like 1,500 active clinical trials happening across the region and about 500 job postings in pharma and so forth every month. So definitely we're seeing momentum in that area.
I also posted the Flynn Bioscience Roadmap Current Progress Report. Flynn Foundation's done phenomenal job at pushing forward the life science industry and biomedical industry in the market, and they have some great data on their website there.
One other
Absolutely.
interesting number between the various universities and TGen, again, the data is a little dated from 2016, but we were bringing in close to 200 million in NIH funded research projects. So that's certainly bringing jobs, highly paid, very interesting scientific jobs to the area.
That's very significant.
Very significant. $200 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I just want to take a moment of thanks to Kyle and Dr. McDaniel and Dr. Monk for a terrific discussion today. Thanks so much for your insights and for everything that you're doing to literally help save lives, change lives, improve business, and strengthen our healthcare and bioscience economy here in Greater
Well,
Phoenix.
Cam just took my closing line.
Oh.
So thank you, Cam, for moderating everything, and thank you, gentlemen. It was truly educational, very enlightening, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to spend with us and educate us on everything that's happening in our bioscience atmosphere here in Arizona. We really appreciate you all. I'd like to ask everyone to mark their calendars for March 18th. That'll be our next event, and thank you to everyone for attending.
Thanks for hosting. It was a great event.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.